What do you make of this?
Well, I think two things. As he's indicating, he thinks it's not a surprise, and part of that is because of what happened on January 6th. Of course, yeah. And also, as Vice President Pence was on the campaign trail, he had different visions for the future of this country than Trump. I think that's the key thing here, Joe, is that we are seeing someone who's saying the future of the Republican Party is changing. And I think there are a number of people like Vice President Pence, potentially Ambassador Haley, who are thinking that if Trump doesn't win in November, then the Republican Party needs to go back to the Reagan-type era of conservatism. If Trump does win in November, it will be a sign that the Republican Party has firmly shifted to his and the MAGA views of where the party should go.
Well, you do wonder if that's already happened. But it's smart. You point out Nikki Haley. She did not endorse anyone when she decided to suspend her campaign. And when you step back a little bit here, because they have something in common, they both worked for Donald Trump. When you look at the team that he assembled and the team that evolved over the course of his presidency, none of them are supporting Donald Trump in his reelection, are they?
Well, I think it remains to be seen. We are still early now, and we've seen in the past that there are certain people who, at the time weren't quick to jump in with Donald Trump, but as he gets closer to potentially regaining the White House, may decide that it behooves them either in terms of influence or actual cabinet positions that they're going to jump in. I mean, we did see Mitch McConnell endorse him recently.
That is true. When you think about the General Millies, though, the Rex Tillersons, the Mick Mulvaney's, none of them are in the MAGA camp in this campaign, and it's striking to hear the vice president now, the former vice president, say that. It was a big day for Donald Trump, by the way. The Georgia case, we understand Fani Willis will stay on the case at the expense of her lead prosecutor, who she had a romantic relationship with. We're also waiting potentially for what appears to be an inevitable delay in the Bragg case in New York, the hush money case that was supposed to start at the end of this month. Peggy, a new dump of documents this week means it will likely be delayed.
I think two things come out of the advancements this week in those cases, which is, one, on the Fani Willis case today, it is a setback for Donald Trump. The bulk of that case is going to go forward, and that's one of the most sprawling cases, and also one at the state level that Trump couldn't pardon himself of if he gets the White House again in November. I think the other key takeaway here from this week is that all of the Trump criminal cases are slowing down. So it remains to be seen if any of them are decided by the November election.
Yeah, the strategy delay appears to be working for him at this point. Peggy Collins, thank you so much for getting us started today. Elsewhere, Israel's war cabinet approving an assault plan for the Gazan city of Rafah after civilians have first been moved out, an indication that authorities are prepared to step up their military campaign against Hamas, with ceasefire talks now ongoing. For more, we bring in Bloomberg's Nick Wadhams, who runs our national security team here in Washington. Nick, this is an important moment. There is a plan, but it's not imminent, we're told. It would still have to be approved. What do you know about the details?
Well, the issue is we don't really know anything about the details. Secretary of State Blinken said today in Vienna, we have not seen the plan, and we really need to see a plan.
Wow.
So this is forcing another issue that's going to has been a big problem for the Biden administration, which is they have pledged so much support for the Netanyahu government. Increasingly, as this war has gone on, they've had more and more concern about the way that Israel is conducting the war. And now we really come to the crux, because there are more than 1 million Palestinians in Rafah. And the U.S. is saying, you have got to get those people out of there before your military forces go in. And Israel is so far saying, hey, trust us, we got it figured out. Of course, you can't just get those people out. You've got to put them someplace where they have food, water, shelter. And so far, the U.S. is saying, we have absolutely no idea how you're going to do this, and you need to tell us quickly before you go ahead. Very unclear how that's going to be resolved.
Well, trust appears to be diminishing among Democrats here in Washington. The speech by Chuck Schumer on the floor of the Senate yesterday calling for a new election. Reaction today from President Joe Biden. He was asked about what Chuck Schumer had to say. Here's how he responded.
Senator Schumer contacted my staff, my senior staff. He's going to make that speech, and I'm not going to elaborate on the speech. He made a good speech, and I think he expressed a serious concern, shared not only by him but by many Americans.
He's surprised to hear essentially an endorsement from the commander-in-chief?
It's very difficult to tell what exactly the president means there when he, there could be a lot riding on the idea of him saying it's a good speech. I mean,
sure.
In some ways, this does serve the administration's interest because it means that they have other people who are putting the pressure on Netanyahu. I mean, there is only so much that President Biden wants to say publicly. Obviously, as far as we're being told, those messages really are being delivered through back channels. But given his public embrace of Netanyahu early on in the war and continuing to supply military aid, ammunition and things like that, to turn around now and then say, you know, to tell him to step aside. I mean, the president does not want to be seen interfering in another country's elections. Yes, so that's a real no-go zone for him.
Fascinating. Just quickly, he's meeting, of course, his green tie reminds us with the Taoiseach today. The Irish Prime Minister is in town, and we understand the Prime Minister got quite an earful with 4,000 comments from his voters urging him in some cases not to come to the U.S., but to also take a stand on our policy in Israel and Gaza. Did the president get an earful from him today?
Well, we're still trying to figure out what exactly was said in that, because obviously it's not in President Biden's interest to say that he got an earful from the prime minister. But what this does, again, is show actually to some degree how much of a benefit it was for President Biden to have Chuck Schumer give that speech, because it shows, listen, I am paying attention, I hear these voices, and we are taking them into consideration. The question is, okay, what now? There are a lot of senators who are calling for conditions on military aid to Israel. The administration has not been willing to go that far. But they are happy to have these voices out there, especially from folks like Chuck Schumer, because it shows he's listening, he's paying attention, he's thinking about what to do next. I mean, what's clear is this is not really sustainable for the Biden administration if Israel does not come up with that plan for Rafah.
This is clearly an important moment. Nick, thank you for walking us through it. Nick Wadhams from our Washington bureau here at Bloomberg. The state of the economy also front and center for many American voters, of course, and next week a rate decision, I should say, and important news conference from Fed Chair Jay Powell could provide some clues about the central bank's next move. And we want to get to this by way of politics with David Wilcox of Bloomberg Economics. David, it's great to see you. You've been writing about this on the terminal, about the extent to which politics might play into the Fed's plan for the year ahead. A lot of people assume that Jay Powell is going to be listening to Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and your research has found exactly the opposite.
It's true. Every time during a presidential election year, the Fed comes under suspicion from all sides that it's going to rig the dice in terms of its rate-setting decisions. Politicians on both sides of the aisle are anxious that the Fed will act to advance the interest of the other party. Investors assume that the Fed will sit still in order to try to stay out of the partisan crossfire. I took a close look at the statistical evidence and concluded that, as best as I could tell, for the past 3 decades, there's no evidence to support those fears.
3 decades of data to put forth here. It's really pretty remarkable, because that suspicion is alive in the markets and in Washington. You're going to be disappointing Donald Trump here. He tended to be just a tweet away from talking to Jay Powell. With your expertise on this, though, David, give us a sense of what we're looking for next week. We've had some tough economic data for this administration, to the point where people are doubting that rate cuts will come anytime soon.
I think it's clear the Fed's going to postpone its rate cut decision until later in the year. The baseline expectation of my colleagues in Bloomberg Economics is the first rate cut will come in May. There's some risk with strong inflation data, activity continuing to be well sustained, that may get pushed back to June. But we're still expecting 2 or 3 rate cuts over the course of this year. The situation is normalizing, getting better. Inflation will come down toward the Fed's 2% objective, and that'll provide the backdrop the Fed needs to take that first step in the cutting cycle.